Hello and welcome to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to create this sort of 3D paper aesthetic look to this little landscape, a little bit of an abstract one. Now this tutorial, as you can see, is a little bit of a longer one, and there's just lots of little things that we do as we go and applying textures and little highlights here and there and everything else that goes into creating a design like this. Now, as always, you'll be able to find all the requirements in the description down below, the palette and anything else that I've included in today's design. Enjoy the process, trust it from start to finish. You'll be able to create something really fun and create this kind of paper aesthetic to your design. Now, as always, a massive shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon who help make these videos possible. And if you want to get access to a catalogue of nearly 80 tutorials, I'll leave a link in the description down below. And with all that said, let's get straight into the tutorial. So once you've created your canvas, we're going to go up to our colors. I'm going to grab this color here in the bottom right. I'm going to drag it onto the empty layer. We're then going to go ahead and change our color to the middle color in that far right column. And we're going to go to our selection tool using the rectangle option and color fill turned on. So you tap on it until it turns blue. We're going to go ahead and create a box on the screen. And we want that box to sit somewhat up here. And we'll fill out the whole of the bottom area. We'll tap on our selection tool when we're done. And then we'll go to our adjustments. We'll go to the option of Gaussian blur and we'll swipe from left to right until we get up to the option of around about 60%. So we're going to go up to there and then tap on our adjustments when we're done. We're then going to go to our layers and create another new layer, and we'll swipe on both of these from left to right and group them together because they're going to be the background elements. With our color, we're going to change it to the one in the top right of the palette. We're going to go to our selection tool yet again and the option of color fill, and we're going to come down to around about sort of this marker here, create a box, let go, tap on your selection tool and then go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right. We're going to blur this one out to around about sort of about 50% and then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And that's going to act as our background area. We are going to go ahead and I want to try and save your layers as we go. So I'm going to create a new layer now. I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab the one in the bottom right of the palette. I'm going to go to my brush. I'm going to go to the option of textures and we're going to use this one here. It's going to be mainly used for a lot of this sort of paperish texture. So this one here. And the size, we're going to make it around about sort of, let's make it a bit bigger than that to save us some time, about 19%. And we're going to sort of very lightly just cover over the whole back area. Now, primarily, you just want to sort of focus that towards the top. And you want to keep your pressure nice and light, really, really light, just to give a general full area of coverage. You don't need to worry about down here because we're going to end up losing that and you'll end up with this sort of grainy texture. You can also go ahead and go to your colors and grab the one in the top right of the palette. So we can go up here and we can just lightly gloss over the darker areas with the lighter tone and then vice versa if you need to for the bottom area. So just going over the top of there just to add in a little bit more texture. Let's then go ahead and start working on the sky elements. So we'll create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here, the middle color in that third column from the right. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to change it to calligraphy and the monoline brush. Doesn't matter what your brush size is, I'm just going to max it out for you. And we're going to go ahead and create the moon, and that's going to sit up here. We're going to draw in a circle. We're going to pop our finger on the screen so it's a nice perfect circle. We'll scale it up to the size that we want, roughly around about here, and then drag and drop the color in. At this point, I'm just going to grab mine and just move it a little bit inwards across the sky. And then tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now on the same layer, we then want to also create some clouds. So I'm going to use my monoline brush. I'm going to bring the brush size down to about sort of 40. That's just a good marker. If we go to our brush, if we tap on the monoline brush and we go to the stabilization options, you can see that my streamline is maxed out and my stabilization is in the middle. That way I get some really lovely wobbly lines, but then nice and sort of smooth, no jitters in there. And we're going to create 3, maybe 2 clouds here. So the first one I'm going to create is just going to come in from the side. I'm going to somewhat create like a very loose, just very wobbly cloud shape. Something really simple like that and drag and drop the color in. You can make whatever fun cartoony shapes that you like. I'm going to go ahead and create another one here, and this one's going to just have some really simple wobbly shapes to it. You may need to get in there once you've dragged and dropped the color in and just round off a few more of the lines. You always want to make sure that they're nice and smooth and they run from one to another just really easily. And then we'll create another one just here as well. Maybe this one's got a little bit more of a pointy, roundy shape to it. And then drag and drop the color into that space. We've got some clouds. And at this point, you can then also grab your selection tool, turn off color fill and use the freehand option. and just draw around any one of the elements that you need to. Make a selection, grab your cursor, and using the uniform option, you can just scale it down in size and just move it into a position that you're really happy with. I want to give a little bit more space to the moon up here. So a little something like this. Now we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer above it and tap on it and clipping mask it to the moon. We're going to go to our colors and grab the darker tone just above it, the top of that third column from the right. And with your brush still set to the monoline brush, but with that slightly different color, just create some random fun little sort of craters for your moon. Again, making sure all your lovely little rounded shapes all just run into one another nicely, and try and leave a gap between them. Just create fun little random wobbles and easy to make little shapes. So a little something like this. Lovely stuff. Let's then create another one in here too. And maybe this one's a little bit of a longer one. And then I'll put another one just over here as well. Maybe just a slightly smaller one. And then drag and drop the color in. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab our eraser. Tap on the eraser and go to the option of airbrushing and the soft airbrush. Reduce that brush size down to something quite small, maybe around about 4%, where you can just about somewhat get in between the gaps of it. And then just sort of blend out a random side. So just blend it out like so until you get rid of that line pretty much perfectly. And then you can just decide from either angle. So I can go ahead and maybe I'll go ahead and do this one from the bottom down here and just sort of blend out an edge, and then just go in a circular motion, get up into those crevices there. I'll do the same up in here too. Sort of blend in from this area here and then just blend inwards in towards the crater. Here we'll do the obvious and do this side here. Blending that in, trying to get rid of that initial line, blending that way. And then this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it from this angle. And if I clip the other one, I clip the other one. It's not a big deal. A little something like this. There we go. We've got a really simple sort of crater look to our moon. We're then going to go ahead and create another new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask it also. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab that middle color again on the third column from the right. We're going to go back to the layer and we're going to change the blend mode from normal to the option of add, but we're going to bring that down straight away just to around about 40 to start with. And we're going to make sure our brush is set to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. And with the brush size maybe around about sort of 7%, we're just going to go ahead and just somewhat brighten up the bottom area, going very, very lightly, just back to front. Very, very light with your pressure. If you struggle with pressure, just bring your opacity down. And we want to slowly build up that this edge down here is a little bit brighter. Maybe then also with our clouds, we can go ahead and just give a little bit of a lighter glow towards the bottom, just a tiny little sort of variation in its color set, very light there. And then over here, just a very light sort of circular motion in the cloud. And that's all we need, just something really, really simple. Now, while we've got our solid shapes, we're going to go to our layer. We're going to go to the actual base layer for all of it, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it and alpha lock it. Then go to your colors and grab, we're going to need to grab this color, hit the bottom of that third column from the right. Go back to the layer, tap on it and use the option of fill. You'll see the thumbnail change, and if we tap on the layer and we turn off the alpha lock, we can then go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right until we add in roughly around about a 10 to 12% Gaussian blur. And then grab your cursor, move it down a little bit towards this sort of left side a little bit. So down towards the left, creating that little drag of the shadow. So the more you add, the bigger obviously the depth is between the clouds and the background, but we don't want it too strong. Now, if we tap on our cursor and then we go to the option of adjustments and liquify, we're going to do this throughout the entirety of the design. If we go to the option of push using liquify, you can vary up your size depending on the area that you're working in. It's not very critical, and you can match up to the other settings there. Now, what we can do is we can go ahead and just push this shadow a little bit sort of closer here. So maybe like at the bottom, I'll just push that a little bit closer, making sure that the shadow is nice and consistent though, as it sort of shapes around. And that just adjusts how the lighting is affecting those areas. For example, if we go ahead and grab this shadow here for this cloud, if I make that shadow get really, really close here to the base of the cloud, it's almost like the distance on this side here is a little bit shorter in terms of height than this side over here. And it almost looks like this corner here is just raising up a little bit more. And that's why you can see that little bit of a shadow. And it just creates a lot more of a fun variety with the shadows, and you can just have some fun creating just random different aesthetics. That one really does look like it's peeling off of this corner almost. And you can repeat that for any cloud that you like. For example, we can do the same here. I can push this up towards that right side a little bit more, as if the gap is a little bit shorter on this side. It doesn't always have to go to the point where it's almost touching. And you can see I'm going back along the line as well to make sure the line is nice and smooth. So I can just push that up. I can push it up in the middle a little bit more and make it look like maybe the paper as such is like warping. So there's a little tiny shadow here, but a much larger one here on the right hand side. So we're just trying to move the shadows around to create fun, different experiences for the person viewing this. I can push this shadow up here, push that up, and we're going to just pretty much kind of repeat this a lot throughout the whole of today's tutorial. The options of blurring and then the options of just pushing the shadow where we want it to create some fun variety. And at certain occasions, I will make the shadow almost completely vanish to again make it look like these two pieces of material, i.e. paper in this particular instance, are touching. They're on the same field, they're on the same height, whereas over here, you can see there, all of those just have so much more fun to them. They're peeling off of the paper. So once you're done, you can tap on your adjustments. Now we're also going to go ahead and we're going to add some texture to this as well. So we'll create a new layer that's clipped to that top one and tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this middle color here in that fourth column. We're going to go back to our brush and we're going to go to the option of textures and this one here again. So make sure to grab that one. And we're going to very lightly go over our clouds, etc. with this brush. Now I'm going to drop it down to about 11% and just keep it really light. And it's going to give you this lovely little sort of papery, grainy effect. And you can be a tiny bit bolder with your pressure just in certain areas. But ultimately, I'm going to go in with a 12% this time. You just want to give it a super, super light coat. Just a little bit of texture will just do wonders for it. So I'm just going to do a little bit of texture there. And then maybe on this one, I'll just run over it left to right, see what comes out of it. And then we're going to go to our moon. We're going to add some texture to this as well. So I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. Now the brush is also going to be determined by the angle that you draw with. If I rotate that round, for example, the lines that you see are now going to be a little bit more diagonal across. And I like that. It changes up the angles of some of the pieces of material, i.e. paper and so on. So I've reduced the brush size now down to about 13%, and maybe I'll sort of darken up this area here and a little bit where the craters are. Just a tiny little extra bit of detail, and maybe just run that around the top edge. You should end up with this lovely little effect. Keep the pressure as little as you can. But then we're going to go back over the top of some of these, maybe just add in a tiny little extra bit of detail here and there. Tiny bit, keeping it super light, super gentle. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it again. And we're going to go to our blend mode and change it to the option of add. Now you may need to just drop this one down again, down to about 40%. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the color here, the middle color again, which is the base color technically. So it's this middle color in the third column from the right. And your brush wants to be set back to airbrushing and the soft brush. Eventually we will have all the brushes we need, by the way, so we can go right up to the very top and use the recent section. Now I'm going to keep this super, super gentle and small, about 2%. Now, globally, we're kind of imagining, though, that there is a light source in the top right. So some of the edges of some of this material, we can just very, very, very tiny amount, just add in a little sort of stroke on the edge of what could be the paper here or the card or whatever we're imagining this is. Now, in case you've never turned this on, if you go up to your actions and go to preferences and turn on the option here for brush cursor, you'll be able to see that little circle that runs around the base there of my pencil. So with a 2%, I can start right outside the edge of the shape and then just come in a tiny bit to add in the tiniest little bit of just edge lighting. We'll do the same up here as well. So we're going to go outside of the shape. I just want to add in like literally like 1 or 2 pixels just right on that edge to add in that lovely crisp edge. Like for example there, that one was way too big. And it doesn't always have to be like the whole line. You can leave gaps. You don't have to make it follow the whole thing. But in certain areas, you may want to just be a bit more experimental and make it a little bit larger. It's totally up to you. It's your preference. But ultimately, you've got that top edge and the lighting coming from above. So we're going to go along here, along this one, and then just duck in and out of that edge just a little bit. And of course, we'll do the moon. Now, this one's a little bit trickier, of course. You've got a much larger area, so just be patient with it. Just go around the edge. You don't have to, again, make sure it's exactly the same all the way around. I've got a little bit of a gap there, and that's fine. I love that. It's just random variety. Maybe the material as such isn't perfect. It's a little bit, leaning upwards in some sort of fashion. But this is just like one of those tiny little extra details that you can add that really will just elevate the whole thing. It's just these tiny little textures as we go. I'm going to bring that round a tiny bit back there. A little crispy white detail on the edge here. And then maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger here and then let that just run down. Just a little bit bigger. And look how much sort of depth they've got to them. It's fantastic. I love it. Now, we're going to go ahead and leave this now and move on to the rest of the design. Now, if you're concerned about your layers, because this does take up a lot, as I mentioned in the intro, we've got this grouped now, and you can simply tap on it and go to the option of flatten, and that will merge all of them onto one layer, save on your layers. So make sure you're just happy with them and they match up a little bit to mine. So once you've done that, we can then start to move on. So we're going to create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab this color here. It is the bottom color in the 6th column along. Apologies for the fact they're all moved across. It's just the way I structured it at the time. We're going to go to our selection tool and we're going to go to the option of rectangle and color fill again. And we're going to create the water level, which is somewhat going to run just around about here. We can always adjust it afterwards. And then once you've done that, you can always grab your cursor and go to freeform and maybe just tinker with it, make it a little bit higher if needs be. And tap on your cursor when you're done. Now I'm going to start at the front here and make my way backwards towards those lovely mountains that we're going to create as well. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we've got a couple of really dark layers to create. And so we're going to grab this color here at the bottom of the 4th column from the right. We're going to go to our brush library and go to calligraphy again. And we're going to go back to the monoline brush. And with that monoline brush, I'm going to leave it at 40%. I'm going to create some really simple rocky ledge down here. So this one's going to be the thinnest of the two. So I'm going to create some sort of bumpy rocky ledges down here. They kind of just roll out a little bit. And then maybe another sort of point on the end. And as long as you go edge to edge, you can drag and drop your color in. We'll go to our layers again and create another one and drag it underneath that layer. Go to our colors. We'll grab this dark tone here at the bottom of the 5th column. And we'll create another set of sort of bumpy, lumpy, sort of rocky areas. So maybe these ones have a slightly different characteristic. They're a little bit more wobbly, and let it just run in behind this area here as well. And drag and drop your color in. And now we're just kind of framing the design a little bit more towards the bottom. You can always, if you like it, so at this stage, maybe make some random sort of, make sure your lines are nice and smooth and run into each other, but like little random lumps that do stick up. So a little bit higher there, for example. And maybe we'll introduce like another random one just here. And then drag and drop your color in. And vice versa, you can also do it on that front layer as well, if you feel you want to do that. Now we're going to leave those two for a moment. We're going to go to our layers. We're going to tap on what is essentially the ocean layer here. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to get started with these little areas of land that sit and occupy on this water. And it's actually this yellow tone here at the top of the 6th column. Now we want to make our brush, probably again, that monoline brush down to around about 40 point. And we're going to go ahead and create some little areas of land. So you kind of want to just create like nice wobbly areas that just sort of run into like here, for example, and then just run out off to the left. And you can drag and drop your color in. So a little something like this. And then we want one that kind of comes in at a bit of an angle here. So I'm going to start somewhat on the point on the end and just like run that over to the right, create like a little sort of point like this, and then drag and drop the color in. And this area here is going to be really sort of angular. It's going to point your user's attention towards the middle of the design. Now for a moment, we'll just work on these two. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer and drag it underneath the yellow shapes. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It is the middle color in the 5th column. I'm going to bring the brush size down a little bit, down to about 19%. And then off the edge of just this one on the right hand side, we're going to create sort of a nice bumpy, rocky, pointy, sort of, it's like the edge of the land is running into the water. So kind of like a rocky surface almost. So I'm going to start over here and I'm just going to make sure the lines just continuously run really smoothly out into the water. So a little something like this. And then I'm going to just create some sort of bumpy, lumpy shapes all the way. Now I know my line runs to round about here, and I'll just make sure it just runs all the way to the bottom. And then I'll just go ahead and grab the top of the line here and just run that all the way to the edge of the screen, so I can drag and drop my color in. You should end up with this surface here. Now don't tell anyone, we're going to be a bit cheeky. We're going to do this side here on the right first, and then just duplicate it over there. I want to save you some time. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to this shape here. Now we're going to create some of the sort of layered effect in this space now. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab what is essentially the shadow color to start with, so the bottom of this fifth column. And we need to create a shape on the top edge that follows sort of the contours and running of your shape that you've made on the global shape. So for example, this line here, just imagine it comes up here and just woof, and then wiggles its way across, and that's, you know, your rocky extra little surface. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring this in here. I'm going to make sure I can get that as smooth running into there as possible, and then create some lovely sort of wobbly rocky shapes, just whatever you can think of. Let that run all the way again out to here, and you can go from here all the way around to your starting point, fill that in and drag and drop the color in. That's all you need to do. Then we can go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one out of these two that we just made, we're going to go to our colors and grab the base color, so this middle color again in that fifth column, and drag it into that shape. It will somewhat disappear bar this little blue line of the one underneath, which is the darker color. Now when we go to our layers and we go down to that darker version, we go to our adjustments and gauge and blur. If we swipe from left to right, and 8% is going to be the mark throughout the whole of this, you can now see it's just been blurred out and you've revealed that little shadow underneath. If we tap on our adjustments when we're done, then go to our adjustments and go to the option of liquify, and repeat similar kind of aspect that we did above with the sky. So for example here, I may want to go ahead and just bring that shadow in. So let me reduce the brush size down to maybe around about sort of 20%. Maybe let's just bring the shadow in here and just make it disappear a little bit more. So as it sort of gets close to where this lovely little point comes in, it somewhat disappears and is only present as it makes its way a little bit further along the line now. So you can see it kind of like blends out, almost disappears. Again, somewhat globally, you've got a light source up here coming across the design. So maybe try and factor that in. Maybe your shadows need to be a little bit more on the left side of a point. So for example, here, I can push that shadow out. I can be really adventurous and let that be nice and sort of distant. And then on the right side of the point, I can tuck the shadow back in. You see the angle change, but I want you to make it nice and random. I don't want you to have too many sort of, this is where the lighting is and this is the rule. Let's just have some fun. Just create lots of, just like we did with our clouds, lots of randomly layered in terms of height, etc. little areas of texture and paper and materials that we're creating this design with. And then down here, I'll bring the shadow down a little bit more. Every time you drag down, you're revealing the shadow a little bit more. And of course, as an alternative, you can push it back up. You can bring it down and then push it back up, adjust the shape till you end up with a little something like this. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the layer. We're going to go to the one that sits above. We're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it so we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the color just here beside it. So the it's the bottom of the sixth column there. Your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush and airbrushing. Brush size maybe around about, probably about 3 or 4%. That looks pretty good. And we can go ahead and just lighten up the bottom area here. So as if the water is just glowing back up. So I'm going to reduce that brush size down to about 2% just to be a little bit more accurate. I'm going to just blend and sort of brighten up the bottom area here. I'll go around the bottom area here too. And again, kind of just keeping it a little bit random. You don't necessarily have to sort of fill in the entirety of the bottom area. I'm just trying to fill in little random spots here. So then I'll increase the brush size up to about 3% now and just brighten up the bottom area here. Go along here, push it up in little areas as well, create slightly larger areas of light. And then down here, we'll just introduce a little bit more like so. Lovely stuff. Just introducing that really cool little glow upwards from the water below. And just like we did above, we're going to go to our colors and grab this color here, the top of the fifth column. Reduce that brush size right down to about 2% and adding a little bit of a crispy line to the edge of the paper, the material, whatever it is you want to refer to it as. I'm reducing that brush size even smaller now, down to about 1%, and just adding in the occasional area of brighter tone. Zoom right out to make sure you've got this lovely effect. And occasionally, just in your brighter areas, just introduce this lovely crispy line that just runs along them. You don't have to add it everywhere. You can leave lovely big gaps if you like. It's totally up to you. This whole design's just meant to be nice and fun, but with the odd sort of nod towards trying to make it look a little bit 3D, etc., and just have some fun with it. Nice and abstract at the same time. Now, before we carry on, this top layer here would be casting a shadow down as well. So we're going to go to our layers, and we're going to go ahead and tap on the yellow layer here. So with these yellow shapes, we're going to go to our selection tool. We're going to turn off color fill. We're going to go to freehand, and we're going to simply draw a circle all the way around it, nice and wide. Tap on the dot. Then we're going to go to the option of copy paste, tap on it. Now it'll have done the work for you. If you go to your layers, there's another version of that yellow layer. Drag it underneath the layer that we originally made. It will clip itself, which is perfect. And we can go to our colors and we can grab our shadowy tone, this one here at the bottom of the 5th column, and drag it into what is that shape there. Now if we go to our layer, you'll see it's now present. We can go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right until we get up to the option of around about that 8 or 9% mark. Then tap on your adjustments. You can see the shadow at the bottom there. You can also then go up to your adjustments and go to the option of liquify. And again, we can have some fun bringing that shadow down. So just vary your brush size up and down depending on the size of the shape that you've got. It's not important that you match up to mine. I'm just bringing this down now with a slightly larger brush size, and I'm going to really bring it down into here. I want that lovely big casted shadow from the top there coming down onto this layer. And then maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller into here, and then nice and dark over here on the right hand side. So I'm really going to bring some of this lovely navy color down. And I'm just going to push a little bit of it down anyway. I want that lovely dark tone to make its way from the top. And then occasionally we like push it back up again to create those little areas where the light and the paper and the material just touch a little bit. I love it. I love it. Looks so cool. Just keep adjusting until you're happy with some of the random shadows. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And then we're going to repeat these steps again for the rocks even further down. So we're going to go to our layers. Now it's important that we now tap on the base shape here. We create a new layer. We go to our colors and make sure we've got this color here at the bottom of that 5th column. We go back to our brush and we go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And now you need to pick a second point in which we now start to bring in some lovely wavy lines, and maybe reduce your brush size down to about 11% to keep it nice and just a little bit more, less of a rounded radius to it, a little bit more pointy. So I'm going to go ahead and use this point here as an idea, and I'm going to go and bring in, so I need to be able to see the shape on the right. I'm going to bring it in, follow the edge of the shape, and then just create some lovely wavy rocky shapes. And then you can tuck them underneath the one above as well. Keep an eye out for where you run out and go all the way up and go all the way around. Go round towards your start point and drag and drop the color in. Take a look at it now, make sure you're happy with kind of how the rocky looks. And then go back to your layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one, go ahead and go to your colors and grab the base color again, this middle color in the 5th column. Drag and drop it in. Then go to your layers and go to the bottom one that you have. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right, again up to that 8% mark. Tap on your adjustments, then tap on your adjustments again and go to liquify. Bring that size down, make sure it's a little bit smaller this time. And again, pick where you want your shadows to be a little bit more prominent. So I can bring this shadow down into here, really create a lovely big dark groove into there. And I can push this shadow down to my left a tiny bit more there, really emphasizing the drop off there. We can bring this in just a little bit here, nothing too crazy, maybe a little bit more in the groove there. Bring this one down. And then I'm going to really make sure that over here on the right hand side is going to get a little bit darker. I imagine that there's not much lighting getting into here. So I want to kind of bring the shadows down a little bit, make sure there's very little area for light to kind of bounce onto a surface. So I'm bringing them down quite a bit darkening that up. But look at how cool some of these little effects look. And then again, I'll maybe bring it in at the top here just to tighten that up a little bit to the shape of that little peak. So there's just a little tiny reveal. I love it. So much cool elevation and depth. Then go back to your layer. And we're going to go back to the base shape for this area here that we're working with. We're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it again. We're going to go to our colors and grab this color here at the bottom of the 6th column. Brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. Brush size, probably around about that 2 or 1% size again, maybe even 3. You can then, let's go bigger. Let's go up to a 2 or 3 and we can just bring in that lovely big glow from the bottom. And I'm going to be quite pushy with this one. I'm going to sort of push it a little bit higher and just imagining that the light's bouncing off of the surface of this water down here, bouncing up onto it, and then just, you know, creating all these lovely glows up into onto the rocks. It's quite a fun little effect. Quite nice and, like I said before, abstract. And you can be nice and bold with some of your color placement here. The more bold you are with the color, of course, the more colorful it's going to be and more vibrant. And that's really what we're going for here today. Just some fun, vibrant little areas of color. Here, I'm going to sort of let that just be on its own, like it's an overlapping area, where here maybe we get a little bit more of the blue in this space here, but there I'll leave that overhang and just leave it. So we've done that there. We're going to go to our colors and add this top of the 5th column highlight edge again. So reduce that brush size down to about 1 or 2%, and then just go around some of the edges of this, creating some lovely crispy edges. So keep it nice and random. Don't have to do every single edge again. And especially when they get over towards a shadowy area, don't add any under here. Totally pointless. The light wouldn't be getting to it anyway because it's layered with another layer on top of it. Zoom out, take a look. Now we need to work on this bottom area here first of the actual shape. So we're going to go down to the base shape of it. We're going to tap on it and we're going to add a mask. If you've never used a mask before, don't stress. It's just a mask that's added on top of that layer. If we make sure we're on it and our color's set to black by double tapping at the bottom of the disc, and we go to our brush and make sure it's still the soft airbrush, we're essentially just going to erase from the bottom. So with around about it's probably a bit too big. Let's go down to about 4% and we're just going to, let's go even bigger than that. So let's go up to 5. Don't worry if you erase above as well. We just want to kind of get rid of this shape down here, like this solid line edge here. We want it to run into the water and kind of vanish. Now, over here on the corner, I'm going to try and get a little bit like quite full on with the erasing. So it just runs into the water there. And if you have the odd little trace of where the line is, don't worry, that's also fine. You know, if you leave a little line like that, that is also fine. So we're just trying to fade this out as if it just runs into the water and we can't see where then the rock, you know, ends. It's almost like it's just falling into kind of some tropical water. Now we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and grab this color here, that shadowy tone, the bottom of the 5th column. I'm going to go to our layer and we're going to tap on the base shape here. We're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it. So we can't paint outside of it. We're going to go to our color again and make sure it's the bottom of that 5th column. And our brush is set to the soft airbrush still. With about 4% brush size, I'm going to now just very lightly go underneath these shadows even more and darken up that top edge. I'm going to take away a little bit of the color of the base shape and really emphasize some of the big casted shadows that are coming down. I'm then going to go to my layers and go up to the next base shape for our pointy shapes here. This one here, it's alpha locked already, and we can now just, again, just emphasize some of the shadows underneath these areas here just a little bit more and just darken them up. Then go to your next base shape up as well, this one here, and just bring in a little bit more of a darker tone up here as well. Blend down towards those lovely bright tones that we created before. Then we're going to go ahead and where we've got all of our layers clipped to that bottom area of rock, we'll create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it again. We're going to go ahead and go to our colors and grab that top color in the 5th column. Reduce that soft airbrush down to about 1 or 2%. And on the top edge now of some of these paper areas, we're going to introduce that little crispy edge. So just a little white edge up here. Reduce that brush size right down if you can. And then just add in this lovely crispy little edges here and there, just on the top of these points over here. Adding in that lovely extra detail. Now we're going to go to our layers and we're going to go ahead and create another new layer underneath that edge highlight. We're going to create a new layer here so it sits underneath, and we're going to change the blend mode from normal and we'll change it to the option of overlay. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this bottom color here in the 6th column. And we're going to go to our brush. We're going to go to the option of textures and the one we used before. And with a brush size of around about sort of 14, probably a little bit smaller than that, maybe around about sort of 11. We're going to go ahead and gloss over here, adding in some lovely little texture. It's going to brighten this up as well. It's going to add in some fun, brighter areas here. And you can see the texture, and you can get a little bit more sort of vibrant in here if you like, and just dash upwards and create some brighter little spots. That's totally up to you. As long as you can see that texture, you are winning. So we've added in some cool texture there. Now, as I mentioned before, we're going to be a little bit naughty now, and we're going to duplicate this and move it over to here. So we're going to go ahead, and once you're happy with all of these layers, you can tap on the base layer, and every layer above that's clipped, swipe from left to right. You can group it together if you like and collapse the group down. If you've got the layers, keep them. If you don't, swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and then both of them, tap on them and flatten them. Tap on them and flatten them. Now the extra one that I've created here, so if you flattened it, it's one layer. If you've duplicated the whole lot, it's obviously a group. You can grab your cursor, we can flip it horizontally, and we can go ahead and just be a little bit naughty and move this into this space here. We can go ahead and even distort it and grab this left side here just to make sure the angles fit up. And I know there's a little bit there peeking up, so we'll just have to adjust that in a moment. So I'm just going to try and move it into position where it somewhat touches there. And you can even sort of just maybe make it just run off of like the large point. It's totally up to you what you want to duplicate and be a bit naughty with. But once you've got it into position where it kind of links up to the land, tap on your cursor and then just get in there and make any adjustments. If it's on one layer, you'll just need to erase this. If you have a base layer like I do, you can use the mask that it's actually got attached to it and go to your brush and go to anything like calligraphy and the monoline brush, and then just erase that from there. So making sure you get rid of that from there, making sure my color is set to completely black, otherwise it won't completely disappear. And we've been a little bit naughty and saved ourselves some time. Now these top layers, we're going to go to our layers. I'm going to collapse that down. The two yellow shapes, we're going to tap on it, alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors. Going to grab the orange in the middle of the 6th column. Go to your brush library and go to airbrushing in the soft brush. With about 10%, if not slightly larger, maybe around about sort of 15. Just blend in from the right hand side over here, blend in and bring in that color. So blend in, creating a lovely gradient. And then again on the left hand side, blend in and bring in that orange. We're then going to go ahead and add some texture to this too. So we'll tap on our layers, we'll create a new one and tap on it and clip it to the top surface there. We're going to go to our colors. I'm going to grab this color here, the middle of the 4th column. Same texture brush, so we need to go back to our brushes and go to texture and use this one here. And we're going to go ahead with a slightly sort of diagonal size. We're just going to go ahead and just gloss over this, adding in some of that texture, just like we did with the moon. I've gone in with a bit of a diagonal angle now, just to vary it up from the one below, and you can somewhat get in there and darken up tiny little areas if needs be. I'm going to rotate it again so that the texture kind of points inwards, keeping it really light and gentle, adding in some lovely, somewhat card texture, I presume. And then we're going to go ahead and create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it also, and change the blend mode from normal and change it to overlay. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this middle color here in the 3rd column from the right. And your brush wants to be set to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. We're going to go ahead and reduce that right down to about 2%. And we're going to go ahead and add in that lovely edge highlight again. So I'm going to just keep it really, really small and just go down this edge here. Only where I feel is necessary. Maybe just round it off on the point there. You'll add in this tiny little crispy highlight, just like we did before. So I won't repeat myself as to what it looks like, but you know what I mean. We're just going to continue this on all the way along. And it's on the same layer as this one over here. So we can go ahead and introduce that crispy edge up here, along there, and maybe along here too. So now that that's done, what we'll also go ahead and do is we'll go to our layers, and the one that's got the texture on, we'll keep it with that one. We'll go to our, so this one here, the one that's clipped to it, we'll go to our colors and grab that middle color in the 4th column. Now your brush wants to still be set to the soft airbrush, but I recommend you really reduce your opacity down to something like 15%. I want you to look at the curvature of the shape you've created. And again, if that light source is coming across, how could we introduce some ripples in here into the paper? So I've got this like little mound up here as if it's like creased and curved upwards. So maybe with maybe a smaller brush size, about 4%, I can maybe just start to darken up a tiny bit on the back end of this sort of hill shape here, as if there's like a groove in the paper. So just a tiny little bit there, and maybe increase your opacity if you can't quite see it, but just like a tiny, super light little groove in the paper, and maybe just like another one here at the bottom of that hill. It just makes it look a tiny bit more less flat. So here I've got another couple of hills, and maybe I can go ahead and just in between these two sort of little peaks here, just introduce like a little bit of a darker streak and blend it to the left and blend it to the right. Likewise here, I'll just introduce a tiny bit in there. It's very subtle, so you might not be able to see it too well on mine, but it just makes that paper look a little bit wavier. You can almost see that there, really sort of waving off of the screen. I'm going to go ahead and just bring this one in a bit more, maybe darken it up on the back end, just to change up that surface. Now we're going to go ahead and add in 2 more pieces of land and repeat the steps. Feel free to just duplicate these, it's totally up to you, but I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to go ahead and create another new layer underneath the top 2. And again, if you're done with these 2 land areas here, swipe from left to right on all 3 and group them together. And if you want to, you can tap on the group and flatten it down. But on an empty layer underneath the 2 layers here at the bottom, we're going to go ahead and go to our colors yet again and grab that top color in the 6th column. Your brush wants to be set to calligraphy in the monoline brush. I'm going to bring the size down to about 12 now, and I'm going to create 2 more areas of land that are going to somewhat come above this sort of horizon line a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring in a bit of land that just runs in and keep it super wobbly and fun. And then I'll go ahead and sort of bring this in with like a bit of a swooping line here and just let that kind of run down a little bit into a point maybe. Drag and drop the colour in. I want to get rid of this sort of beaky point on the end, so I'm going to grab my eraser, go to calligraphy in the monoline brush and just reduce the brush size down to anything quite small, and then just sort of adjust that shape a tiny bit. I didn't want the big monoline blob there on the end, so a little something like that instead. Go back to my brush. I'm going to create another piece of land. So I want this one to be a little bit closer towards us, so not quite as high as that one, but I want this one to also be a little bit larger. So I'm going to go ahead and just create some really fun wobbly line, kind of similar shape, but also again just let that run over the top. Drag and drop the color in. And then at this point you may want to just move them around a tiny bit. I'm pretty happy with where they are, so we'll leave them as is. While we're working on them, we'll repeat the same steps we just did. So we'll go to the layer, we'll tap on it and we'll alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the orange just underneath it, so the middle of the 6th column. Your brush wants to be set to airbrushing and the soft brush. Bring that opacity back up to 100 and the size back up to, I think it was around about 12. And then just blend that color in from the right hand side, creating a lovely gradient of color. Just add a little pop of color. And then blend that in from the left hand side again on this one. Again, we'll add some texture so we can save on our layers. We'll tap on it, tap on the new layer and clipping mask it to it. So create a new layer and clip it. Go to your color, change it to the middle color in the 4th column. Brush wants to be set to our texture brush. And then once you've grabbed that, we can then go ahead and pick an angle, maybe straight upwards, maybe slightly straight up, and just overlap that with some little area of texture, giving it that kind of paperish-ish look to it. And then this one, I'm going to go over the top. I don't want it to run too straight because it will run into the sky at the minute anyway before we get to the mountain areas. So we'll fill in some areas of color here. We'll then again on the same layer, we'll go back to our brush and go back to airbrushing and the soft brush. Bring that opacity down back to about sort of 20% where I was. Again, it's totally dependent on you, but down to about 6% brush size. You're looking for the waves that you've created in your paper. And I can see one here that I'd like to sort of marry up, this point and this point. So I'll create like a bit of a groove running along here. Just sort of overlap it a couple of times and then just blend it out either way. And then maybe just sort of blend it in a little bit more on one side here. And then leave that there. Here maybe I could introduce a bit of a slightly dipped groove into here. Or something like that. Again, when you zoom out, it just gives it a little bit more of a ripple look to it. Do the same over here. I'm going to kind of partner up this dip to this dip. So I'll just bring that in there. Blend that out to the left. Blend that out to the right. I'll do the same here as well. But maybe just on the top, because this is a slightly sort of flatter surface, maybe it just ripples at the back there. Not quite so much at the front. And then back here, maybe we'll just introduce a tiny little one here, just to change up that surface a bit more. So it's less flat and a little bit more ripples. Next, let's go ahead and add in that crispy edge. So we're going to go to our colors and grab the middle color in that third column from the right. You want to go to your layers and we're going to create a new one. Tap on it and clipping mask it and change the blend mode from normal, change it to overlay. We can then go ahead and add in that lovely crispy edge. So I'm just going to add it on the top and here to go along that edge. And again, trying to sort of anything that points a little bit more up towards that top right hand side, I'm going to add that crispy edge onto it. So just a little something like this. You could add it on here as well, maybe a little bit at the bottom, just here and there, just a tiny little bit of execution on there, a little something like that. I don't want to add in it in large areas. Here, I'll add in a tiny bit along there, push that out to the right. And then again, and another one here. And another one here. And that should do it for that top surface. We're then going to go ahead and we can swipe from left to right on all of them if you like and group them together. You can tap on the group and flatten it, or you can go ahead and carry on. Now we need to create a new layer underneath either the layer or the group if you've still got it as a group. And we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, the middle of that fifth column. Go to your brush and go to calligraphy in the monoline brush. And just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and with maybe a 12% brush size, we're going to create some just fun areas of rock that runs down into the water. Now for this one here on the left, you kind of want to sort of focus it like that kind of shape a little bit. So it makes its way a little bit in towards the middle, but we want to kind of leave this area a little bit more exposed. So I'm going to go ahead and not quite so bumpy and lumpy either. I'm maybe just going to sort of run this point a little bit down towards the water like so. And then from there, I want to go ahead, I'll adjust this in a moment. I'm going to leave that little bit on the end because that's what I'm going to erase. Now I'm just going to create some sort of rocky land here, go all the way round towards my starting point, which just runs off the tip there, and drag and drop the color in. I'll go to my eraser and I will just round this off. This is what I'm always talking about where I say, let your lines run into each other. We want that lovely curve into there. Or, you know, you could have it go round into here and then sort of loop around like that, whatever you fancy. And then we'll go ahead and do the same process as we did before. So we're going to go to our colors and grab the bottom color in the fifth column. Your brush wants to be still set to the monoline. We're going to go to our layers, create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Now over here we kind of have 3 stacked on top of each other. At the back we're going to simplify it down to 2. So we can now create sort of one big wobbly shape. So I'm going to follow this curve here and leave this little pointy peak on the end, so I can leave that to itself. So I'm going to go round there and then kind of just create some really fun shapes, and you can make some really high and just run up underneath the land. You can just wiggle your pen how you like, maybe a little bit more flat, a little bit more sort of pointy. You can let them run really low down and you can then let them run really high. As long as once you go all the way to the end on the left, you go ahead and go all the way around to your start point, through the top shape, drag and drop your color in, and then just like I've got to here, just smooth out any shapes that you may or may not need to do. And that is going to be your one layer for this area. Now if we go to our layer, we swipe it to the left and duplicate it. This layer here, the top one out of the ones that we just duplicated, we go to our color and we grab the base color again, the middle color in that fifth column, drag it onto the shape. We go back to our layers and we go to the one underneath, the darker one. Adjustments, Gaussian blur, swipe from left to right, introduce that 8% Gaussian blur. Tap on your adjustments and then tap on it again and go to liquefy. And we can push this shadow around how we like. So we can bring this down again, pushing that under there, pushing that under here. Now, just like we did before, this may get a tiny bit lost, but you are dictating the shadows quite a bit by doing this. So you can still have that fun creative look to it, even though you may lose a little bit sort of the definition of the shadows. We can still pick and choose where we want that depth to be. So I'm going to bring this down, and I prefer this method than sort of drawing it in with the soft airbrush. It's almost a little bit easier. It's a little bit more relaxed. You don't have to maybe do it all in one movement. You can just push it down, and because we've got such things as momentum and stuff like that on, when you push it down, sometimes it drags on a little bit. It really just pushes itself along. So you can then create some really cool shapes. Now we're going to go ahead and introduce the top shadow as well. So we're going to go ahead and go into this group here. So this group has the top layer. If you flattened it down, it's not a problem. All you need to do is tap on the layer that's got the majority of the big shape. Go to your selection tool, make sure color fill's turned off and draw all the way around it. Tap on the dot, copy paste, and then go to your layer. Grab this layer, drag it down, and we need it to clip to this little sort of rocky shape here. So it looks like this. I can collapse that group down. If you've got a singular layer, it's fine. We can then tap on this layer and we can alpha lock it. We can go ahead and go to our colors and grab the shadow tone at the bottom of the 5th column. And go to the layer, tap on it and fill it. We'll tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. We'll go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right until we introduce that 8% Gaussian blur. Tap on your adjustments and then tap on it again and go to liquefy. And again, we'll push down, creating some lovely big shadow under here. So that area there is a little bit thin, so you haven't got a lot of sort of space to push down. So I'm going to increase my brush size up to somewhere in the 20s here, just to kind of bring this shadow in, bringing it down so it overhangs over the top of all of this. We do want a certain like level of contrast to this, so I'm going to bring this down over here, and it's quite wavy. It's just where the lighting is just, you know, being pushed around. And tap on your adjustments when you're done. Now, if we go ahead and go to that shape there, so this one here, if I turn it on and off, you can see it turning on and off on the screen. We're going to go to that layer, tap on it and alpha lock it. Just like before, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here. It's the bottom of the 6th column. We're going to go to our brush and go to airbrushing and the soft brush, probably around about a 3 or 4% brush size. Just going to go ahead and just brighten up the points at the bottom. You can be nice and quick and easy with this. You can be really punchy with your color. Again, it's just where the light of the water is bouncing up and hitting this rocky surface. And we're just having some fun with it. Now, just very quickly, I've just adjusted my brightness on my iPad just to bring it in line a little bit closer to where we are in terms of color wise. My camera was making it look a little bit brighter, so we should all be looking at somewhat a little bit closer now. Now we're going to go ahead and go to our colors and we're going to grab the top color in the 5th column, reduce that brush size down to 2%, and again add in those lovely crispy edges. Then reduce this down to 2%. Just add in a couple of little bright spots here and there, just on the edge. Just a few. And go along a few lines. You can let that just run into the next one. Just a couple, like so. Now we're then going to go ahead and go to the base layer here. Now we've got the shadow that runs underneath it, and just like before, we need to tap on this layer and add a mask to it. When you're on the mask, go to your color, double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black. It's going to use the same brush, so the soft air brush, and the brush size wants to be around about sort of 4 or 5%. And we're going to again blend this out so that it runs into the water, just disappears down into the water. We don't see it, blends out. So get rid of a little bit of that line, just a little bit. You don't have to get rid of the whole thing. You can push it up in certain areas, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. Then we're going to go ahead and further those shadows again. So we'll go to our layers. We'll go ahead and tap on the layer itself, not the mask. So tapping on here, go to your colors and grab the bottom of the 5th column, brush, set to the soft air brush. And we're going to go ahead and with about sort of a 6 or 5%, just run underneath here, darkening that up a tiny bit more. Then we're going to go ahead and add some texture. So we're going to go ahead and above our layers, we're going to go ahead and create a new one. Tap on it and clip it so it's stacked in. Go to your colors and we're going to go ahead and grab this color here, the bottom of the 6th column. Your layer needs to be set to the option of overlay. And we're going to go to our brush and change it to the option of textures, and the same one we've been using before. And we're going to go ahead and just give it some of this lovely texture, run over the whole of it. You'll see it quite literally almost come to life with this texture. I think it looks fantastic. You can be a little bit more punchy in certain areas if you wish. And there we go, we've done that second area as well. Now it's up to you. You can go to your layers and swipe from left to right. You can go ahead and group all of them together, And you can swipe that to the left and duplicate it. You can then tap on either layer and flatten it, and then move it across to here if you want to save some time. Alternatively, you can do what I'm going to do, is where we create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the middle color again in the 5th column and repeat the same steps. So we're going to go to our brush library and go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And again, we're just going to go ahead and introduce some sort of bumpy, lumpy shape. Now I'm going to follow this area here down into the water, but I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter over here, where because it's a little bit further in the distance, it just, doesn't really quite have that same sort of level of detail really. So I'm going to drag and drop it in, and it also adds some nice variation to the sort of surfaces that we've created here. And I can maybe let that just change a little bit, where maybe we just bring that down into here, drag and drop color into that space. Now we've got this piece of land, we can then go ahead and create a new layer above it. We can swipe from left to right on both of these just to group them together. We can go ahead and this new layer, we can tap on it and clipping mask it. We'll go to our colors yet again and grab that dark tone at the bottom of the 5th column. And we'll go ahead and create another new layer. Now maybe this one here, because it's again a little bit further back, maybe you just sort of create some longer, whiny, long roads like this, and windy should I say, and then go all the way across to the right hand side, so making sure your lines are nice and smooth, unlike mine was there. I'll drag and drop the color into that little space. And then if you go all the way around from your end point, all the way around to your start point, round the top, drag and drop your color in, you can then go ahead and move on to the shading step like we did before. So we'll go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top point out the two, go to your colors and grab the middle color in the 5th column. Drag and drop it into that space. Then your layer, the bottom one underneath it, you can go ahead and go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right and go to that 8% mark at the top. Then tap on your adjustments and tap on it again and go to liquify. And again, we'll push the shadows how we want. Now I'm imagining the light source is almost sort of top down over here. So I'm going to go ahead and yes, I'll move it across to the left a tiny bit like we've been doing everywhere else, but maybe here it's just a little bit more top down. So I can get away with sort of pushing them a little bit further down. And as I get towards the left, I've got to push this shadow a little bit more towards that left hand side. Moving back across here, I'll push this one down on the right side here. Long shadow, but that's about it. Then we'll go to our layers. We'll go ahead and grab that shape there. So we need to go ahead and open up that group again. So this one here, again, if yours is on one layer, it doesn't make any difference. You can just tap on the layer and go to our selection tool and make a selection around it. Go to copy paste. Go to your layers, it'll have now been pasted in, drag it into the group we're currently working on. And then from there, we can tap on this layer and alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and grab our shadow tone at the bottom of the 5th column. Go back to the layer, tap on it and fill it. Then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Go to your adjustments and go to Gaussian blur and swipe from left to right, 8% or 9 would be fine. Tap on your adjustments and then tap on it again and go to liquify. And we'll do the same process. We'll bring that shadow down, push this down. So I appreciate you if you're hanging out in this particular part of the design. As I mentioned before, or in the intro, everybody can skip ahead if they want, if they're fed up of doing the same steps. There's little shortcuts you can take, but it somewhat compromises the design. So if you are doing it step by step, let me know in the comments. Let me know by saying step by step in the comments if you are following along every single part as we go. So once you've moved all those shadows down, we can then tap on our adjustments when we're done. If we go to our layers, we can go ahead and tap on this shape here. You can see this flashing there on the screen. We'll tap on it and we'll alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the bottom color in the 6th column. Brush should still be set to the soft airbrush. It's not, it's monoline, so we'll go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Brush size around about sort of 5%. And we'll go ahead and brighten up that bottom area here. So just keeping this one a little bit simple, but I'm going to brighten this one up, push that up towards my shadows as well. So I'm going to get that a little bit higher. Push that along these edges down here. Just like before, we'll go to our colors at this point and go to the top of the 5th column. Reduce your brush size down to about sort of 2% or 1% even, and just add in that crispy edge. So where you can, where you think it's necessary, just add in that lovely bright edge. Only in areas where you think the lighting's going to hit though. A couple of little random executed lines. There we go. Lovely crispy details. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go down to the base shape again. We're going to tap on it and we're going to mask it. Add in on that mask. You want to make sure your color is set to black. Your brush still set to a soft airbrush. Brush size maybe around about 5 or 6%, and just blend out that bottom area. Blend that out, blending that out like so. Keep a little bit of the shape. It's not a problem if you do. Like I said before, it's all okay. Lovely stuff. Let's add some texture before we finish this area. So we'll go ahead and we will tap on the top layer in our group and create a new layer. Tap on it and clipping mask it. We'll change the blend mode from normal to overlay. We'll go to our colors and grab the one at the bottom of the 6th column. And your brush wants to be set to textures and the same one we've been using before. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate this a tiny bit. In fact, I'll go the other way. I'll go the opposite way to the one above it. Brush size is set to quite a large one now. I'm going to drop it down to 10 and then go back over it and just adding in some fun little texture along there. And there we go. Now at this stage, we can now go ahead and adjust some of the water and start to add in some areas down here. Now, yet again, with that group that we just were working on, simply collapse it down if you're done with it, or tap on it and flatten it. It's totally up to you. The one at the top here as well, for those top layer shapes, you can go ahead and tap on that and flatten it if you haven't already. And you can get rid of as many layers as you want by flattening them into each other. Now we're going to go ahead and go down to the water layer here, this big block of turquoise. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here first. It's the middle of the 6th column. Your brush wants to be set to the option of inking and the studio pen. Now if I tap on the studio pen, I've made some adjustments to my stabilization just as we did before, just to create some lovely smooth lines. So take a look at the amount of streamline and stabilization there. When you're done, hit done. And we're going to go ahead with a brush size of 12%. We're just going to go ahead and create kind of like very abstract kind of ripples. So I'm going to go ahead and go round here and then just follow that down with a large amount of pressure, a little something like that. So you've got a thin taper there. I'll do the same over here. I'll kind of just wrap that round here, and you can basically follow along the shape of the actual land that you created, if not slightly off from it. And that doesn't stop there. We can then go ahead and just sort of make it look like it wraps around here too. You can get close to it. You don't have to follow it perfectly. And I'll do the same here as well. What I'll also go ahead and do is I'll just create some little sort of ripples here in the water. Just a few, nothing too crazy. Just a little something like this. So once you've added in these lines, we can then go ahead and repeat the same steps we kind of did before. We'll tap on the layer and we'll alpha lock it. We'll go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the 2. We'll go to our colors and grab the shadow tone at the bottom of the 5th column. Go to the layer, tap on it and fill it. Tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Then go to your adjustments and go to the option of Gaussian blur. So from left to right, adding in roughly around about 4% though, because these lines are a little bit thin. I don't want to add in the 8. It gets rid of the shape a bit too much. So 4% Gaussian blur. Then just grab your cursor and just move it down just a tiny bit, which adds in that lovely amount of sort of depth. Then tap on your cursor when you're done. Then just like before, go to your adjustments and liquefy. And now just decide where you want to kind of tie the sort of shadows to. You may need to reduce your brush size to a smaller size if you're working in an area where you've got these little ripples in the water and these ones here. So I'm going to get this like really, really close here, and then just see what we want to come up with, just like we did with the clouds, just like we've done with other layers. We're just sort of varying up the depth of how far those shadows are from the actual shape. So I'm going to push that up there, and they just look so cool. They just look like they flick up. These ones here look like little worms. They kind of like just sort of bow a little bit, and you're imagining again that you're just planting paper on top of each other, or card, or any kind of other material on top of each other. And then if they are not sat flat, you'll get these fantastic little sort of 3D shapes. So I'm going to push the shadow here a little bit closer on occasions to the line. So just getting in there, get a little bit closer. And then down here, I'll just leave that nice and dark. Here with this line, I want to make it a little bit closer on the end there. So just trying to push that up a little bit closer. Again, you might have to reduce your brush size if you've got a line like the little sort of waves in the water there a little bit too close. And then in the middle, we'll start to maybe think about getting a little bit closer to it again. In a minute, we are, by the way, going to add in a shadow underneath these areas of land anyway. So don't sort of stress too much about this. We're going to add in so much more shadow that this is probably going to get a little bit lost. But just like we did with the rocks earlier, it may or may not help, kind of that 3D effect. Definitely the waves in the middle of your design will definitely keep their kind of their little shapes. up here. I'm going to just tuck that one in a little bit closer under there, tucking that in. And then maybe we'll tuck it in again a little bit closer. It doesn't always have to be fully under, but you can. And I think that looks great. I think it just adds in so much fun detail. You can probably hear it in my voice. It just sounds so fun. It's just very easy to make kind of really cool little shadows here and there. Like that's just completely flat. And then these ones here are really stretching away shadow wise. And I'm just making sure that my lines are nice and smooth. And they just nicely transition one shadow into the other and divot into the next. So we've now got a lovely shadow there. If we go to our layers and we tap on the actual orange lines, we tap on them, making sure that they are alpha locked, and they are. If we go to our colors and we grab the top of the 6th column, the yellow, make sure our brush is set to the option of airbrushing and soft brush. We make that brush size around about, let's make it a bit bigger than that, maybe around about 11%, essentially through the middle here, so about 11% there. We're just going to then blend out to the left along those long lines and blend out along them too. And you can make the brush size a little bit smaller, maybe down to sort of about 6%, and then switch back to the orange. And then with your little ones here, potentially you could reduce the brush size down to about 3 even, just maybe blend in a little bit of orange like on the ends, so like a little something like this on the smaller ones. And then take a look at your long lines, making sure you're happy with the amount of color, which I am. We can then go ahead and add in some texture to the water. So if we tap on the actual turquoisey layer here, we'll create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the water. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to go ahead and grab the bottom of the 5th column. Now this is going to be our shadowy tone, so we're going to make sure our brush is set to the soft brush under airbrushing. Around about sort of a 7% Gaussian blur, soft airbrush. God, we're losing it because we've been doing this a little while. We're going to go ahead and just shadow underneath these areas here, as I mentioned before. So we're just going to start to really sort of darken up some of the shadowy tones over here. Pushing in that shadow, making it a little bit darker where we can get away with. And then another little shadow here too. Just going to push that in towards the center, let that just fade into the middle area. And then just darken up under here. It's kind of just like the land underneath the water. Down into here too. Push that in towards the center, leaving the middle area nice and bright with this beautiful bright turquoisey color, and kind of just darkening up under there. Now less will be more at this point, and also we need to go ahead and darken up the horizon line as well, so bring in that shadow, what will eventually be our mountains anyway. I'll just darken up there for a minute. Now let's go ahead and add some texture. So we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the bottom of the 5th column. We're going to go to our layers and we'll create another new layer. We'll tap on it and we'll clipping mask it. We'll go to our brush and we'll change it to this one here, same one as before. Brush size probably around about 17%, and just color in the entirety of the water. And you'll get that fantastic texture come through. Keep it really light. If you press too firm, you'll end up with something like this. Really light, and you'll see these fantastic crisscrosses and creases in the paper. A little something like this. Now, fantastic job if you're carrying on with me at this point. We are now going to make our way in towards these mountain areas. So we've got a few sort of similar processes to what we've done before. So we're going to go to our layers. We can go ahead and swipe from left to right on all 3 of these layers for the water, group them together, collapse the group down if you need to keep it for later, or tap on it and flatten it. It's totally up to you based on your layer count. But in front of it, we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this color here, the bottom of the 4th column. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to change it to calligraphy again and the monoline brush. And we're going to introduce the first little sort of sub mountain, little hill over here. So I'm going to sort of start a little bit somewhat over here and then just bring in some really fun wobbly sort of mountain sides. Runs in behind that and go all the way over to the left once you've sort of filled that area in. Drag and drop the color in. And a similar process as I mentioned as below. So we're going to go to our layers, we'll create a new layer. We'll tap on it and we'll clipping mask it to it. We grab what is essentially the shadow tone, which is the top of the 4th column. We're going to be working in this column here and this one here just beside it. So the top of the 4th column, we're going to go ahead then and create a fun little shape. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to again follow some of the curvature of some of the shapes, so I can follow that initial bit in at the top and just bring in some really lovely wobbly rocky lines. Let that go all the way towards the bottom and then go all the way around to your starting point and drag and drop your color in. Just like before, we go to the layer, we swipe it to the left and we duplicate it. We grab what is essentially the base color. So we go to our colors and grab the bottom of that fourth column, drag it into that space. We then go to the shadowy color. So we're on that layer for the shadows. We go to our adjustments and we go to Gaussian blur. We swipe from left to right to the 8% mark yet again. We tap on our adjustments twice so that we can go back into the option of liquify. And we can now start to push these shadows around it again. So bringing in like a little bit more of a shadow here, just as before. Now we are, of course, just like before, maybe going to introduce a little bit more of a darker tone here. So it's totally up to you how big or small you make some of these shadows. It's totally up to you, but we can just push that across into there. A little something like this. And then for the texture for this layer, we go to the base layer here, this one here at the top that we're going to be working with, this one here. Tap on it and we alpha lock it. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the shadowy tone for it, which is the middle color in the fourth column. We go to our brush library. If we go down to industrial and we use the twisted tree brush, with the brush size maybe around about sort of 7% or around that mark, we can just run over the top of it. Literally all you need to do, just run over the top of it, random sort of pressures as you go. Then go ahead and go to your colors and grab the color here at the bottom of the third column. It's on its own. Then reduce the brush size down to either 2 or even the same one if you can get away with the weight of it. And then just sort of brighten up the top edge a bit more. Brighten this up, creating some variation in the colors, keeping it real nice and rocky, which will look awesome. And with this one, we then want to go ahead and I'm going to remove this one. We're just going to make it around about a 4% brush size and then just brighten up the bottom area as well. So brighten up the top and the bottom a little bit more with this one. So just brighten that up a little bit down here. A little bit here. I'm going to go along that edge. And now with this top one only, we're going to go to our colors and grab this color here. It's the middle of that third column from the right. And imagining the moon is somewhat sort of brightening up this edge. We're just going to introduce like a couple of scrapes of this yellow along this surface edge here. Just introducing like little sort of specks of it. Now we're going to make sure that runs all the way down. Lovely stuff. And then just like before, we'll add in the edge highlights. So we'll make sure we're still on that same brush, but if we make sure it's a little bit smaller, about 1%, and we really press with some pressure, we can just brighten up that edge a little bit more. So it might not be apparent on this layer quite so much because we've got the lighting coming across, but it will be later on when we add in some shadows behind this layer. So I'm just going down the edge here. This one's a bit of a rough brush, so occasionally you may see it catch or it may not. And then just like before, maybe we just introduce the tiniest little bit just like here and here. Again, remembering that this is essentially what looks like rocky paper. You know, maybe there is a little area here and a little one there too, and a little one there as well. There's some extra little details. Now, just like we did down here where we introduced these kind of like wavy sort of looks to them, if we go to our colors and we grab the middle color in the fourth column, we go to our brush and change it to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. And bring that size down and definitely bring that opacity down to about sort of 20%. So brush size is about 4, probably a bit too big. You kind of want to just maybe think about sort of darkening up in here and creating those little sort of ripple shapes again. So like in behind these sort of peaks, or maybe just darken that up in there and then blend that up a little bit into here. And then that looks pretty good to me. That just sort of varies up the surface. It looks like that really bounces up and that bounces up as well. So we've done that layer. We can now go ahead and go to our layers. We'll tap on the base shape again. We'll create a new layer, go to our colors and grab the top color in the fourth column. We go to our brush yet again and we go to calligraphy and the monoline. And we're going to go into here and create yet another shape. So I'm going to just sort of make this a little bit sort of wobblier and a little bit spikier as we do. And maybe it runs into here and then round. I can't see it here, but I know where it just left, which was just in there. I'll go all the way around to my start point and I'll drag and drop the color in. And we'll repeat the same steps. We'll go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one out of the two, we go to our colors and we go to the base color, bottom of that fourth column, and we drag and drop it into that space. If we go to our layers and we go down a layer to the shadow version, we go again to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right, adding in that 8% Gaussian blur. And we go to our adjustments and we go to liquify. And again, we can just push this down under here, bring in those extra shadows, different angles that we fancy the look of in here where it's really dark, I'm just going to bring that right down. I'm going to make that really look like there's a lot of sort of distance there and real sort of stacked on top of each other. And you can bring some of these shadows right down as well so that they also sort of go right up to the edge, because there's going to be 3 stacked on top of each other here. Now, if we go to our layer, we go to the base shape for that shape. You can see I'll turn it on and off. If we go ahead and tap on it again, alpha lock it, go to our colors and grab the middle color in that 4th column. We go to our brush and we go to textures, and we go to industrial even, and we go to twisted tree. Brush size maybe around about that 7 or 5% mark. Overlay this whole space, introducing some lovely tone in there, and you can really darken this up if you like underneath where you can see some of your shadows that you added in before. Emphasize them a bit more if you like. Just get under there and really follow where you entered those shadows and just really punch them out with some of this sort of texture of the brush. Then go to your colors and grab the color here at the bottom of the 3rd column. Reduce the brush size maybe down to around about sort of 3 or 4. And then just brighten up the bottom edge. So because the top one's blocking the light, it's down here primarily now that's going to get this really fun, brighter look to it. So we'll just bring in a little bit of that. And also we can go to our brush and change it to the option of painting and the stucco brush. And we can just scrape in some little lines here and there if we like with this brush. So like little random areas of more quite crispy, angular detail in here. So different types of rocky texture. And you can do that on that top layer if you want to revisit it, but something a little bit like that will give you some fantastic little detail. If we then go to our colors and we go ahead and we grab this color here, in fact we'll grab the one in the very top right of the palette. We'll go to our brush and change it to airbrushing and the soft brush, making the opacity 100% again and the size very small, so we can add in again those crispy white details. So like just down this edge here, down this edge, couple of these, just get some lovely little details on it. So apologies if you're getting a bit fed up with hearing the same things, but it is a very repetitive process and I do not skip ahead in my tutorials. So I want to guide you through it step by step. Someone's got to fill the dead air. So once we zoom out, you've got this really cool sort of stacked on top of each other kind of rocky texture. And then for the base shape, we can just simply tap on it, alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the middle color in that 4th column. Your brush wants to be set back to industrial in that twisted tree. And I'm going to go to 7% and just fill in that space in here. I'm going to go ahead then and grab my lighter tone, the bottom of the 3rd column. Bring that brush size down to about 3. And then just brighten up under here. So away from your shadows, you can just brighten up in here. And add in a little bit of extra brighter tone in there. Make sure you zoom out just to get an idea for the levels that you've added. And just like before, if you need to, you can go back to your sort of shading color, that maybe even the top of the 4th column, and then get in there and just emphasize some of those shadows if needs be. And as I explained a second ago as well, you can also go back to your brighter tone at the bottom of the 3rd column, go to the option of painting instead, and use the stucco brush to add in some crispy little dashes and nice eroded lines in there. The stucco brush is fantastic, so lovely little textures in there where you can fit them in. And there we go, you've got your first somewhat of a mountain done. We can now progress on to yet another area. However, we need to factor in layers around it. So this one here, I imagine, is on top. Maybe it's casting a bit of a shadow too. So if we go to the top layer in that stack and create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab the top of the 4th column. I'm going to do this manually. I'm going to go to my airbrush and the soft airbrush under airbrushing. And with a brush size maybe around about 4%, I'm just going to factor in a bit of a shadow under here, like so. Just to show the hierarchy of what's on top of what, not trying to stretch it out too far upwards though. Just like, you know, it can be quite nice and tight to the shape, but nothing too high up. Because again, that lighting's coming this way. It's just a matter of just trying to make sure things are stacked on top of each other in a nice way. So you've done your first mountain. We just repeat those steps yet again. So we'll go to our layers. You can swipe from left to right on all of these yet again, group them together, and you have the option then to collapse it down, tap on it and flatten it, or keep it as it is. The only thing you need to do is tap on either the group below or the layer below, create a new layer underneath that group. See there? And on this layer, we're going to go ahead and go to our colors and grab the base color yet again, the bottom of the 4th column, and repeat. So we'll go to our brush, we'll go to airbrushing, calligraphy, and the monoline. You can tell I'm losing my mind, sorry. Calligraphy and the monoline brush. And the brush is set to 18, just so I've got those lovely wobbly little shapes that I can create. And I'm going to bring this in from here, and I'm going to somewhat create a peak here, and then let that run all the way down to around about here. So you're kind of creating a shape that's going to look a little bit like that in terms of its structure, but like nice wobbly up and down lines. So we'll go ahead and just create some wobbly peaks in here, and nice sort of flat points as well. Creating some lovely little sort of variety in some of your shapes, and let that kind of just run all the way around. You're now going to see it here as well, so make sure you go all the way along so it's nice and neat here. Drag and drop the color in. So that's going to be your main mountain. We can then repeat the same steps. So create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. Go to your shadowy tone, the top one in that 4th column, and we're going to introduce our first shape. So I'm going to follow the curvature of some of these areas here, and just little wobbly lines here and there, lovely flat surfaces as well. Go all the way around to your start point, drag and drop your color in. Go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one, go to your colors and grab the base color and drag and drop it on top. And then again in your layers, you need to go to the darker one underneath. We'll go to our adjustments, we'll go to Gaussian blur, and we'll swipe from left to right till we get to that 8%. We'll then tap on our adjustments twice so we can go to liquefy, and we'll start pushing this around. So we can bring down the shadows where we feel we want them to step off from the page a bit more. You can also tuck them in again at the top like so. Again, that light source is primarily over on the right, ideally. And so we can, just vary up some of these little shadowy points, a little something like that. Till you create a little something like this. I'm going to go for something a bit brave like that, big sort of crease in it. And then if we go to the top layer, so the base shape for that, if I turn it on and off, tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your colors and grab this color here, the middle of the 3rd, 4th column. Go to your brush and go to the option of the industrial area and twisted tree. 7% brush size for me now, and I'm just going to cover this area here with this lovely tone, creating some lovely cool texture. Look how cool that looks. And then if we go ahead and go to our colors, we grab the bottom of the 3rd column. We can then go ahead and we can make that around about probably around about 4 or 5. And to brighten up the bottom area down here. With a little bit of this brush, I'm going to go in with the stucco in a second, but just introducing a little bit of a brighter spot down here. I'm going to go in, as I said, with the brush and go to painting and the stucco, because this is quite a large area. I think it's worth that with a brush size of maybe around about probably larger than that, about 9%, just introduce some quite crispy, fine details in here. A little something like that, like little scuffs and lines. You can crisscross them, they always look really cool. If you can get away with that, a couple of crisscrosses on there, zoom out, look how fun that looks. Then, just like before, we're going to go to our colors and grab the middle color here in the 3rd column from the right. And we'll go to our brush. And in fact, we'll keep the stucco brush. Let's roll with that. We're just going to add in that edge highlight. So we're going to go down this edge here, adding in like a bright tone here. And now this one's essentially where in our little story land here of our design, the moon or the sun, whatever it is just bouncing onto the mountain side. So we can like brighten this up with that color, introducing some sort of rocky areas here. I'm trying to like bring the light round a tiny bit by just dragging it in towards the middle of the shape a bit more. Go down this edge, a couple of little extra dashes and scrapes, just keeping it nice and light. A little bit like that. And then just like before, we'll go to our colors and grab the top right color in the palette. I will go to my brush and go to airbrushing though, and the soft brush yet again. Reduce that brush size down to about 1 or 2% and just get those lovely crispy details in again. So outside of the shape, just brightening up the edge with something really, really thin. Sometimes, to be honest with you, the ones that are like literally like a pixel or even less, just the smallest you can get them, like you can get it to a quarter of a pixel, you're a genius. But something that's just super, super thin, but nice, bright enough that you can spot it, but just super, super thin, look fantastic, just really crispy. Along that edge, little something like that. Zooming out, fantastic stuff. Again, at this layer, we can go ahead and maybe introduce some of those like warping paper looks. So if we go to our colors and grab this middle color in the fourth column, reduce that airbrush down to about sort of 20% where we were before, and maybe around about sort of a 4% brush size. I'll keep it on the same layer we're working on, and let's reduce that size down to about 2%, and maybe like in behind some of the curves, you know, point to point. Okay, maybe we'll darken up into here. Just darkening that up, creating some variation like a dip and a groove in the paper. Maybe where this one raises up into here, I'll kind of just sort of darken up here to here, and then just blend that out a little bit. Blend that out up onto the hill. And then maybe in this groove here, we'll just introduce a little bit of a darker tone, just trying to warp the material over and over again, just warping that material, keeping it a little bit more bumpy and lumpy. Let's repeat exactly the same steps again. So we go down to the base shape, we create a new layer. We tap on our colors and we go to the bottom of the fourth column. If we go to our brush and we change it to calligraphy and we go to the monoline brush, we can then go ahead and create our next shape. So I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, we need to change the color, apologies, to the top of the fourth column. And we're going to go ahead and bring that in from here and then just create some, again, just quite, you know, you can make this kind of like cave-like almost, you know, like wobbly lines like this. Have fun with it. Create some really fun, interesting, curvy shapes. Go all the way around to your start point. So I went all the way around the top there, drag and drop the color in. And then go to your layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And the top one out the two, go to your colors and go to the base color, the bottom of the fourth column, and drag and drop that color in. And yet again, if we go to our layers and we go to the shadow one underneath, we go to our adjustments, we go to Gaussian blur and we swipe from left to right, introducing that 8% Gaussian blur. We then go to our adjustments again, tap on it twice so we can go to liquify. And then we can make our mind up of what we want to, you know, exaggerate a bit more, what sort of areas are in those shadows. That one was pushed probably a little bit too far there. So I'm just going to bring that down, making sure it's nice and, you know, the lighting is coming down after all. So we'll just bring that down, or something like that. Lovely stuff. And then we'll tap on our adjustments when we're done. Just like before, we'll go to our layers, we tap on the actual layer itself, we tap on it and we alpha lock it. We go to our colors and we grab this color here, the middle of that fourth column. Go to our brush and we go to the option of industrial, twisted tree, 7% brush size, and we cover that with some really fun texture in here. Lovely stuff. Again, it's totally up to you. You can then start to exaggerate some of your shadows a bit more, maybe around about 4%. You can, you know, really start to exaggerate where you added them in, just to make sure that they're nice and bold, and there is like a little bit of separation between the layers. You know, there is like an elevation here, there is a stacking process. And then go to your colors and grab the bottom of the third column and brighten up the bottom edge, introducing this little bit of extra color down here. You can be quite brave and add in some really nice bright patches if you like, you know, especially right towards the bottom where it's out of the way from the shadows. Or something like this, get in there. Again, we can go to our brush, we can go to painting and the stucco brush, and we can, maybe with a slightly larger brush size, about 8%, just add in the odd like lovely little scrape here and there. Just makes it look a little bit more rocky, a little bit more beaten up. Then we'll go ahead and we'll go to our colors and go to the one in the top right of the palette. We'll go to our brush and change it to airbrushing and the soft brush. We'll keep it on the same layer, but the opacity wants to be up to 100%, and the size, again, nice and small, about 2. And we'll go ahead and just, probably smaller than that. We'll go right around that edge. So with a design like this, there's always like, you know, lots of little things that you've got to keep repetitive. You've got to keep things just like following the same format the whole way around. So it's obvious what each layer is to one another, and, you know, a format and a styling that go all the way around. These crispy edges are one of those exact examples. Now, if we go ahead and we go to our colors again, and we grab that middle color in the fourth column, brush wants to be around about 4% again, and the opacity, bring that down to around about sort of 20. And you can pick an area where you want to think about maybe introducing like a bit of a groove here and there. Maybe we'll push up into here and just like try and darken up there, creating a little bit less of a warp. It's a little bit harder now because it's not the top layer, but occasionally you may be able to go, okay, well, maybe I can darken up in there. That looks like a bit of a groove and like a dip. And then maybe we can reduce that brush size down to about 2% and maybe just introduce like another one here, blend that out to the left and blend that out to the right. It's just random little sort of defects almost in the papers. Let's go to our layers then and repeat. We go down to the base shape, we create a new layer. We'll go to our color and make sure it's this top color in the 4th column. Brush wants to be set to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And yet again, we're going to go ahead and follow the curvature of some of the shapes. You're probably fed up with me by now, I apologize, but just bring in that lovely rocky texture all the way down to the bottom and all the way around to your starting point. Now this area here is actually going to be blue, and it's going to be essentially where the light's sort of bouncing up. So this is our final rocky layer. So I've gone all the way around to my start point, so I can drag and drop the color in. That's a big enough gap there that I like, so I'm going to crack on with that. We'll go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one out the 2, we go to our color and we grab the base color, the bottom of the 4th column, drag and drop it into the shape. We go to our layer and we go down to the one underneath that we made. We go ahead and go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, say it with me, swipe from left to right, 8%. We then tap on our adjustments twice. We go to liquefy and we exaggerate some of our shadows. So we'll push this down. Am I losing my mind? Are you losing your mind? Again, let me know in the comments. So we're pushing down some of these shadows here. And this area here, I imagine it's going to be quite a dark area, truthfully. So that's why I'm pushing them quite a little bit further than normal. You know, you've got lots of other layers stacked on top. I'm going to tap on my adjustments when I'm done. If we go to the base layer, we tap on it. So this layer here, I'll turn it on and off just to be sure. Tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your colors and grab the middle color in the 4th column. Go to your brush and go to the option of industrial yet again and twisted tree. We'll go to that 7% marker and we'll give it some lovely texture. Lovely big coat. Now this one here is stacked quite sort of on top of this one. So maybe if we go to our colors and we grab that bottom color in the 3rd column, we need to think about being a little bit more restrictive with where we add this in. So with about a 4 or 5% brush size, I'm going to think about, well, I can get away with it here in this space because it's a little bit more exposed, but in here I can maybe only just do like there. That I'm going to leave nice and dark. That stacking looks fantastic. And then maybe a little bit down here. And at this point, we will add in that sort of brighter edge, but we want to keep it to a minimum. So we'll go to our color and we'll go to that top right color in the palette. We'll go to our brush, making sure it's set to airbrushing and the soft brush. Opacity 100% yet again, and the size down to 1 or 2. Zooming in, we'll just create that lovely crispy edge. I want to know what my counter is for that actually, of how many times I've said that. If you've been paying enough attention, again, let me know in the comments if you've been keeping track on that. Maybe a tiny little one in here, but like a little one like that. Maybe even undo that, keep it nice and dark. And then another one just down there as well. I'm not going to add any warping of this one because it's not very visible. Now, then what we need to do is we need to go to the base layer. We'll go to our colors. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this color here. It is the middle color in the 2nd column from the right. Drag and drop it into that space. We're then going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the color just beside it, this one here. We're going to go to our brush library, making sure we use the soft airbrush. Then go back to your layer, tap on it and alpha lock it. And now with the brush size around about sort of 7%, we can just darken up under here. We're going to slowly leave a little bit of blue, but just a tiny bit. And then in behind here, I'm going to kind of mimic the shape of the hill in front, really darken up in there. That's kind of our base shadow. If we then go to our colors, we'll go ahead and we'll grab this bottom color here in the 5th column. So we're going to go ahead and, with not too much contrast though, we just want to go ahead and just darken up in here and just follow a little bit of that shape of these hills here in front, and then in behind some of them on the left hand side, following suit with the sort of directional change. We're just going to go ahead and just darken up under there, and then also under here as well, just lightly from left to right. You can really take away some of that color, but leaving a little bit of that area there a little bit more exposed, but a little bit into there, a little bit darker. And to me, that's just like a little area where the water is just in maybe a bit of a cave. It's just a little bit of fun. And then just like before, we'll go to our layers, or colors even, we'll go to the top right of our colors. We'll go to our layers and we will go ahead and go to the top of this mountain stack, create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. And this is just going to be a tiny little edge highlight. So we're going to make sure our brush is set to the soft brush under airbrushing and our size is set to something very, very, very small. We can just go ahead and just maybe brighten up just the tiniest little bit along there, just the tiniest bit on there. Bring that down. Now at this point, what we can do is we can go to our layers. We can go to the base shape for this mountain and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, make sure it's alpha locked, tap on it and alpha lock it, it should be already. But go to your colors and go to this one here at the bottom of this column here. So the bottom of the third column from the right. Go to your layer, tap on it and fill it. Then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Then go to your adjustments and go to Gaussian blur, and again swipe from left to right until you get that 8% Gaussian blur. And now we're trying to introduce that there's a shadow here behind this mountain. Now we are going to go ahead and grab our cursor and just move this off towards like the left hand side a little bit like so, just to create that level of depth. And again, we'll go to our adjustments, we'll tap on it and we'll go to liquify, and we'll be in control of where we want to push these shadows to. So potentially again, we can reduce the size down of this and move this like a little bit closer here, but like really like point this shadow outwards here at the top, pushing it to the left a bit more to really kind of show that it just really sticks out on that top point, creating lots of depth here. And we have a tiny bit of a shadow there. We'll just move this one backwards a bit more, creating a bit more of a shadow, and maybe bring in the top a tiny bit so it kind of touches a bit more. At the back here, I'm just willing to darken that up even more. But I love the non sort of formulated shadows, just like we've done at the very, very beginning, what feels like 3 or 4 days ago when we did our clouds there. So here I'm going to go ahead and push this shadow upwards a bit more. I'm going to allow it to have a little bit more breathing space, a little bit more color and a little bit more depth to it. And then here, maybe I'll just try and bring a bit of that shadow in to here. There we go. I can just about see it starting to reveal itself. And then maybe we just about just give it a tiny, tiny bit of shadow. I'm bringing it in from all the way over here, trying to just see if I can get a little bit of darkness just around this edge there, just to show a little bit of depth. And again, here, I'll just do the same. And I'm going to just push this along towards the left. And also, you'll be able to see that shadow also come in here as well, right underneath onto the water, where again, we're starting to stack layers on top of each other. So we've got this fantastic depth effect there in the background. And we can go to our layers. Now, just like before, over here, we need to think about this layer here. So with the mounting group, we're not quite done yet. We'll go ahead and we can do it on this highlight layer that we created. So the top layer that's clipped to that mountain, we can go ahead and go to our colors and grab the top color in the 4th column. And we can go ahead and just with a soft airbrush around about maybe 3 or 4%, just darken up in here. Just a tiny, tiny bit to show that this is stacked on top. So just a very, very light shadow there to keep a lot of sort of separation. Now, massive congratulations if you're making your way through to this point. We are going to add another one here on the right. Again, totally up to you. You can cheat, you can copy this and flip it over. Now, I say the word cheat, and I don't believe it is a cheat necessarily, but to a lot of people it is, but you can duplicate it and move it over to the right. I'm going to draw it in because we want to create things nice and unique. So I'm going to swipe from left to right yet again on all of these layers here for that mountain on the left. You can group them together, collapse the group down, you can tap on it and flatten it, you're done with it. Ultimately then, I'm going to go ahead and tap underneath it. So tapping on this, whatever this is actually the water. I'll create a new layer. I'll go to my colors and I'll grab the bottom of the 4th column. I'll go to my brush and go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And again, I'll create another little mountain. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller so it kind of frames our moon a little bit. I'm going to start up here, but I'm going to take sort of inspiration from my other moon mountain that I created and go all the way around. Start at the beginning, drag and drop my color in, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go to that layer. We'll create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it and get started with the layering effect again. So we go to our colors and we grab the dark color at the top of the 4th column. And then we'll introduce our first little area. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to sort of let that weave in from the bottom and then start to get a little bit sort of bumpier and lumpier, and then go out on the right and go all the way around to my start point. Drag and drop the colour in, and that's my first shape. And again, we go to our layer, we swipe it to the left and we duplicate it. The top one out of the two, we go to our colours and we grab the bottom colour, the base colour. We drag and drop it into that space. We then go to our layers and we go to the shadow one underneath it, go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we swipe from left to right, introducing yet again that 8% Gaussian blur. Again, we go to our adjustments once more, liquefy, and then we can get away with starting to move this around a bit more. So I'm going to again push this down, but a little bit to the left, but maybe more so towards like a downward position. I feel like the light's maybe right here, and yes, the moon goes that way, but as we make our way this way, we can start to maybe drag things out to the left a bit more to sort of follow that continuity. But here underneath, maybe we just sort of drag these ones down a little bit just to show like a little bit of a shadow there. So just like before, we go back to the top layer, so the one here, I can see it flashing, tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your colors and grab the middle color in that fourth column. Go to your brush. We'll go to the option of industrial and twisted tree, 7% brush size, and we cover the whole thing. Give that really cool texture. You can be quite firm in certain areas if you want to darken it up quite a bit. Then go to your color and grab the bottom of the third column. Reduce that brush size down to about 4 or 5%. And brighten up the bottom area down here. I'm just going along that edge, brightening that up just a bit more, pushing up the odd little sort of scrape. And just like before, we'll use the stucco in a second, which is actually now. So we'll go to our brush, painting, stucco, and just add some scrapes. The brush size, by the way, is 8%. Adding in some little sort of scrapes and scuffs here, just some fine sort of extra details. And then just like before, we'll go to our color in the top right of the palette. And we'll go to our brush and change it to airbrushing and the soft brush. We're going to go ahead and add those soft highlights or the edges down here. So that little crispy edge first, before we add in the top highlight area. I'm going to go along here. Maybe a couple of really thin ones in there. I love the thin ones. I said it earlier, the thin ones look really cool. And then we'll go ahead and go to our colors and we'll grab this color here, the middle of the third column from the right. Your brush wants to be set to something like we did before, which was, we can go to industrial and we can go to the twisted tree. Maybe around about a 4% brush size, we can just sort of brighten up on that top surface a little bit more of this sort of yellowy tone that's maybe coming off of the moon onto this area here. Just a little bit of extra color, like so. Lovely stuff. And then from there, because it's the top layer, we can go ahead and go to our colors and grab the middle color in that fourth column. Change your brush to airbrushing and the soft brush, maybe a 3 or 4%, and that opacity down to 20, because we'll introduce those sort of little ripples. So we're trying to look again, maybe here to here. That's quite a large brush size. We'll bring that down to about sort of 3. I'll go ahead and in here, maybe just blend that up the hill and left to right. Here, that's a great angle here. This little curve here, I can reduce the brush size down to about 2% and draw a line almost straight across here. Blend that to the left and then blend that to the right, but really make that sort of dip look quite present. And then maybe even here, I can do another one. Where things start to sort of dip down, they are perfect partners for this kind of effect. You know, finding and matching them up look fantastic. And you can just create those lovely wobbles and jitters in the page and the paper. So we'll go to our layers. We'll go ahead and tap on the base shape yet again. And we'll go ahead and create a new layer. We'll go to our color and grab that top color in the fourth column. Brush wants to be set to calligraphy in the monoline. And we're going to go ahead and add in a next layer of rock. So I'm going to go ahead and do it from the right side this time. I'm going to come in and straight away kind of just create these lovely wobbles. Now, I don't want to make it sort of match up to the one above. So I'm going to try and make sure we do create something that's like a little bit unique. I have this like easy repetition thing where I can see something and just duplicate it. Now I've gone all the way around and gone all the way so I can drag and drop the color in. We go to the layer, we swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And making sure on the top one, we go to our color and then go to the base color at the bottom of the fourth column. And we drag and drop that in. We go to our layer, we go down to the shadow one, and we go ahead and go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and we swipe from left to right, getting that 8% Gaussian blur. Tap on your adjustments twice so you can go to liquify. And again, push your shadows down where you want them. So we're very nearly there. We've just got to get through this sort of final step. And push these shadows down, really exaggerate some of these darker areas. I'm going to really drag this one out. I'm going to make it look like it really has a huge drop down. And then if we go to our layer and we tap on the base shape for it, so that shape here that we just created, you can see it there flashing. Tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your color and grab the middle color in the fourth column. Go to your brush. Go to industrial and the twisted tree. 7% brush size just like before. And we can just cover that in with some texture. Lovely stuff. Then go to your colors and grab the bottom of that bottom of the third column and reduce the brush size maybe down to about 4% and brighten up the bottom edge. And again, we've got the shadows from the one above, so maybe try to sort of be quite sparing with this and just add in a little bit. It is the sort of darker area, so I'm trying to make sure that the bottom's a little bit brighter because it helps the shadows underneath, but the shadowy and darker spots above have some, like, you know, good distance. And again, I can go to my colors and grab, say, the middle color in that fourth column and emphasize those shadows a little bit more by darkening up this area here and just exaggerating them a tiny bit more if needs be, just to bring them down and really show that darkness and the stacking. Again, we'll go to our colors and grab this color in the top right of the palette. We'll go to our brush and we'll go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Bring that up to 100% and bring the size down to 1. Add in your crispy edges. And do a couple along here. Another one in there. And that's it. I'm not going to add anything else there. The only thing I'm now going to do is replicate this blue area in here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my base layer. I'm going to go ahead and go to my color. I'm going to grab this color here, the middle color on that second column from the right. Drag and drop it in. Go to my colors. I'm going to jump straight to this color here, the bottom of the fifth column. Soft airbrush still around about sort of 5 or 6%. And under here, just really sort of darken that up. Really take away some of that until you get like a little bit of blue towards the bottom. I don't mind that. Maybe a little bit here, because of course we now need to remember, if we drop the brush size down to about 3%, this layer here in front is in front. So we'll just add in like a little bit of a shadow here, just along that shape line there. Keep that elevation. And just like we did over there with the shadow, we're going to go to our layers. I'm going to swipe this base shape to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one out of the two, tap on it and alpha lock it. Go to your colors and grab the color over here at the bottom of the third column. Go back to your layer, tap on it and fill it. Then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right until you get the 8% Gaussian blur. Now at this point, this angle's not going to work too well. So if we grab our cursor, what we want to try and do is we want to move it down and just a little bit off to the left, just a tiny bit. You may just about be able to sneak in a shadow, but again, we're in control of this. So what we can do is we can go up to our adjustments and go to liquify, and we can, make sure, does this peak stick out somehow or for some reason based on the layout of all the layers? That's fine. Even though the lighting's coming down and it's not the best angle in the world, this side over here, we can exaggerate a few things just to show a little bit of a shadow here. I think the shadows just make it all come to life. So just a few of them, not every single one, but just enough that you can just get an idea that there's a stacking system in place. And then when you're done, just tap on your adjustments. Again, just like before, you can go ahead and swipe from left to right on all of these layers in this area here for this mountain, group them together, collapse the group down. Again, you can tap on it and flatten it if needs be. Now, the only thing we need to do is right at the beginning, I've got you to make 2 layers here at the bottom. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we're happy with where they are, and I am. The only thing I want to then do is if we go to the layer at the very top, which is this darker one right in front of us, we'll tap on it and we will go ahead and alpha lock it. We'll go to our colors and grab the color in the top right of the palette, which is like our light source color. We're going to go to our brush and change it to soft airbrush still, probably around about sort of a 7% with a very low opacity, maybe around about 35%. We can just very lightly just brighten up the top edges a tiny bit. Not every single part, but just a little bit here and there, just along this edge, keeping it nice and sort of easy and simple. But just like before, we're going to increase the opacity up to 100%, bring that size down to 1, and then we're going to take a look at the shape and see if we can just add in like the odd little bright area. Now, you might not be able to see your shape too well, or even my shape, but you can see what kind of effect that we're trying to go for. We're just trying to just see if we can just bring in that edge, just like so, just reveal it in the design. We'll add some texture to this in a second as well, just like the rest of the design. Even though it's super dark, we can add in a little bit. The odd sort of crispy line along this edge just really will make it stand out, give it a nice sort of shape as well, make it look a lot more solid. Even though this is a flat surface down here, I'll introduce a little bit on there, and then I can just about see a tiny bit on the top edge here. Just a little bit. Again, these tiny little ones, they make me smile. They're so cute almost, but they're just enough to make that paper sort of stand out. And then if we go to our brush and we go ahead and go into textures, and the same one we've been using throughout the whole of the design, if we then go ahead with the same color we're working with, maybe just keep the brush size to about sort of 12%, super light, just on the top edge, just add in the lightest stroke of this texture. You can see there, that is literally all I'm going for here. Just the lightest little bit of texture. The occasional spot, if you fancy the look of it, when it's a little bit, a little bit heavier with the texture, go for it. I encourage you to be experimental, but just that's what I'm going for. Just a really light little sort of inkling that there's a little bit of texture on this dark card here, for example. But if you want to go over the top of it, with something a little bit brighter, you're more than welcome to. Then we'll go to our layer. We'll go down to the next one, which is just in front of it, tap on it and alpha lock it. While we're still working with sort of the texture brush, we'll just simply go over the top of that one as well. So just go along there. You can maybe introduce like a little bit sort of brighter spots here and there. I'm not going to add that initial soft airbrush. The only thing I will do is once I've gone over it with a little bit of texture like so, I will then just add those edge highlights. So go into airbrushing and the soft brush. Bring that down to that 1% yet again. And we'll just introduce those crispy, fantastic little accents on here. Every time I see a paper kind of cut out aesthetic and they have like these little tiny edges that just take so much time and detail and effort, they're the ones to me that really stand out. They're the ones that catch my eye because I can appreciate the little tiny things. And I'm sure once your friends see your finished design here, they will also see those lovely little details, and it really elevates the overall look of the whole thing. So I'm really happy with how they look. We just need to introduce shadows underneath these as well. So if we go to our layers, we can go ahead and swipe that layer we were just working with to the left and duplicate it. It's already alpha locked, so the bottom one out the two. Go to your colors, grab the bottom color here, the bottom of that third column from the right. Go to the layer, tap on it and fill it. Then tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Go to your adjustments and go to Gauge and Blur. Yet again, swipe from left to right. Introducing something though a little bit bigger, about sort of 10%. I've caught you off guard. 10% there. And then we'll go to our adjustments yet again. Liquify. We'll zoom in and we'll push these shadows around and maybe just sort of bring them out a tiny bit on the back end of some of these little peaks and stuff. Again, even though there's like a lighting coming across, we want that kind of like overall impression of just like stacked layers on top of each other. So I'm going to bring that one into here, bring that out of its sort of shape a tiny bit more there. That's just enough, and that's it. I'm not going to add a drop shadow to of the front one here because it's so dark already, and the layer that it would sit on top of is quite dark. There's not really a necessary reason to do so. Now at this point you could pinch with two fingers and you'd be finished, but if you want to take this to another level, I have a paper set of brushes. This is totally optional, and if you want to purchase them, there'll be a link in the description and I'll flash a discount code on the screen now if you want to grab them. But there are a bunch of paper textures and we can just add in either a general coat or on your individual layers you can add in some extra details. So if we go down to sort of the background group here, we can go ahead and open that up. If you flattened it down onto one layer, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer underneath my sort of moons, etc. And with my color set to the one in the bottom right of the palette. In fact, this one here, the bottom of that third column from the right. If I go to my brush library, and if we go into my paper canvas textures, I've got all of these awesome brushes in here, and you can add some fantastic details. If we go to our paper texture one here, and with a brush size, maybe about 31%, we can experiment. We can go ahead and just sort of go left to right over the background and see if we can add in some additional sort of creases and grooves in here. And look at that, look how that's come into life in the background and adding in a little bit more detail. It will boost the contrast a little bit, so it's a little bit of an experiment to try and sort of balance it out. If we go to my moon group, for example, here, and I create a new layer here just above the moons and the clouds, I can change the brush. I can go to my brush library and grab a different one. There's up to 7 here plus 2 fine details. I'm going to grab paper texture number 7. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the brush size down to about sort of 12%, and I'll just coat over these. And look at that, they just look so cool. Just that additional little crease and groove there, and you can go back over them as long as you keep the brush size the same. I can make the brush size a little bit bigger now for the moon, go over the top of this and just maybe see if I can add in some additional sort of creasing and grooves, which I can. And when you find them, just go back over them. Again, it will boost your contrast, so maybe potentially think about, lowering the opacity of the layer. Once you find something that you like, just lower it down so it's not too much, but it will boost those fantastic little textures. We can do the same in the water at the bottom. We can go ahead and open that group up. Again, if you flattened it down, it's no problem. All you need to do is create a new layer and clip it to it. We can go ahead and you can go to the bottom of the 6th column, change the layer blend mode from normal to overlay. If you've still got the group, you can go ahead and turn that texture off if you like, or you can keep it on and layer this on top. Introduce these like brighter creases in here, so that's a little bit more of a papery texture. I can see those lovely details in here. I love it. Looks so cool. It just makes it all look a little bit more 3D, and you could apply that throughout the whole of the design to lots of different layers. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and pinch with 2 fingers. I'm going to go full screen with 4, and we have finished today's design. I thank you so much if you managed to watch all the way through. As always, please be sure to subscribe for weekly tutorials. Massive shout out to my supporters over on Patreon who help make these videos possible. And if you liked these type of longer tutorials, I post extra tutorials every single month over on my Patreon that tend to be a little bit longer and a little bit more detailed. So if you want to get access to a catalogue of nearly 80 tutorials with sneak peeks, early access and much, much more, hit the link in the description down below. And if you liked this one on YouTube, you'll probably like this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.